Hi, everyone. All right, awesome. Welcome to the live pitch event. So today we're going to have the pleasure of hearing from three different groups presenting about three quite different games, and I'm really excited for the opportunity to hear about the work that they're doing. This is really cutting-edge alpha, not necessarily completely finished stuff. We're really seeing the beginning of the process here. So the prompt that Games for Change asked to these creative people was the following: please creatively respond to current political events and encourage civic engagement. So you'll see the wide range of things that we got as a result of that prompt. So I want to start by introducing our first group. Sarah Fotovat has 26 years of experience in IT and is the CEO of Software Flow. Aidan is 10 years old and created this game when he was 9. Daniel, his older brother, is 14, and they've worked together to analyze and create this game. Please welcome the Immigrants Nightmare team.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Fotovat. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the organizer to give us an opportunity to present it in front of you. Let us watch our video together. So our story began when my son Aidan had to create a board game for his 4th grade school project. I was very surprised when he came to me and he showed me the very first sketch of his idea. He called it Immigrants' Nightmare.
Every time I turned on the TV or went on YouTube, all I saw were things about the election and the huge wall. My mom was an immigrant, and of course, my brother and I are children of an immigrant too. We know how hard it was for our mom to come to the US.
So my brother made the board game of all these different countries at the corners as players and the US at the center, each player's goal being to get into the US. What adds a twist to this game, though, is that the new president, Benjamin Montana, who we just made up, has built a gigantic wall surrounding the US and has cracked down on almost all immigration. In this game, each player must go on his own path through the ups and downs, back and forth, to get a degree and collect assets as a requirement to get into the US and pass the wall. And some people who can't afford a degree are forced to go in illegally through a tunnel or another means of transportation. Now buckle up and get ready for the most difficult task of your life, getting into America.
Finally, I turned in my board game to my teacher, thinking I'd get an A, but actually it got sent to the principal's office, all because they thought the game was racist. But I just wanted to reflect what I heard on the news.
So we decided to go and make a real version of the board game. We went and hired an American company to develop our very first iPhone and Android apps. Like a business analyst, I did all the requirement gathering and sent all the rules to the programmers who were working on the game.
So as we kept working on the game, we also realized issues that the game addressed. It brings awareness to the huge immigration crisis in America and around the world. It also shows that many immigrants bring their assets and skill to contribute to society, not to be destructive toward it.
We were also thinking about what would have happened in the past if we had strict immigration laws. Like Steve Jobs' father, a Syrian, would never have gotten here. Einstein, one of the greatest scientists of all time, was also an immigrant. In fact, 6 American scientists were awarded Nobel Prizes this year. None of them were born in the US.
I tried to get my children exposed to science and music and follow the footsteps of game changers of the world.
So we need you to help us help everybody.
We need to help America realize the huge crisis in our world and in our own country, and how a wall won't stop it. Instead, we need a proactive solution that can actually do something about the problem.
This game will serve as an educational tool and storytelling platform to teach our children about history and politics.
Please share your journey as an immigrant with us via email on our website, www.immigrantsnightmare.com. Your story could be incorporated into our game, and eventually, put online to share everyone's challenges and achievements as immigrants. Remember, we were all immigrants at some point.
We just created a basic prototype. We are hoping in future version we will cover more countries and more historical events. Let us put our hand together and build bridges instead of walls. With your help, we'll be able to finish debugging the mobile app and get it to App Store. We'll be able to send our prototype board game to our manufacturer for tooling, modeling, and delivery. Please back our campaign and share it with your friends and family on social media so that together we can create the most important board game of the 21st century. In return, we will give you a copy of the game and educate the whole world. Thank you.
Our team consists of 3 people. There's my brother, Aidan, who's 10 years old. He's the creator and designer of the game. There's me, Daniel. I'm 14 years old, and I'm the business analyst of the game. And there's our mom, the president of our company and our seed funder. She has a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science and has over 26 years of IT experience. She also has 1 pending patent.
Basically, what you have seen is what we created last year, and the next step, the next game that we created is Immigrant Challenge. We are trying to be a storytelling platform and cover many historical events and teach children politics and history. Our next stop will be Berlin Wall and Great Wall of China. So these are, as I mentioned, series of board game and mobile apps. Our mission is, we are hoping that the children of today, who are going to be the policymakers of tomorrow, are going to play with this game and make decisions with higher amount of awareness.
So our story began when I was assigned a 4th grade school project from my teacher. And at the same time, the election was at its peak, where and immigration was a really hot topic. So I had the idea to combine the two and make Immigrants Nightmare. So this is my very first sketch and very first draft, and I had showed it to my mom. And me and my older brother, Daniel, had created the first physical board game, which we had submitted to our school. And unfortunately, the school didn't like it, but whatever. So we created a second board game, which I have right here, which was professionally created using Photoshop and had been printed at a local FedEx. Oh yeah, we also made our very first business cards. So we made a mobile app because we realized that all the children and all the adults, they're only carrying their phones everywhere. So we made the mobile game, and in this you can have a multiple selection of countries to choose from. Like as you see here, it's Mexico and China. So, and you see US is in the center surrounded by a huge wall. And Mexico and China are trying to immigrate in, which reflects the US-Mexican immigration issue. You may be wondering, what are those boxes at the top right corner? Well, these boxes are assets in education, and you collect these along your way to get into the US legally. So the problem we're trying to solve here is how to bring awareness to the US immigration crisis. In 1970, there were only a measly 13.5 million. Yeah, it may seem like little, but you know. So, but then in 2015, it became a whopping 61 million, with 11.5 million illegally immigrating. And we want to show awareness to these immigrants because, I mean, have you ever seen someone that had kicked dirt in the eye or something of like someone else, an immigrant? Because like we need to bring the awareness and make everyone equal.
So after a while, we realized that the immigration crisis isn't limited only to the US, but can be seen all over the world. So with the next version of the game, we made Immigrant Challenge, which reflects the global immigration crisis. So in 2015, there were 244 million world migrants, and 20 million of those were refugees. Just in 2000, there were 173 million worldwide migrants, and the projected future number of world immigrants is 640 million. So in Immigrant Challenge, not only do players have the ability to choose their own country, so in this case they're choosing Syria and India, but they can also choose the country they're trying to migrate to. So like in this case it's Germany. So Germany would be in the center, and it's surrounded by a gigantic wall, and then it would reflect the Syrian refugee crisis, which is one of the largest immigration crises in decades. So in this game, there are no dice. Instead, players collect cards that tell them to move forward or backward, or to go to the nearest airport, or to collect a skill or asset, etc. So in these cards, we can put relevant pop-up advertisements, like taking an advertisement for an ESL class for an immigrant that has just come to the U.S., or a Udemy class, or there can even be advertisements for immigration advice by an immigration lawyer. So, our direct competitors include Alliance for a Just Society and Make a Move, or Tomo El Paso. But the problem with those competitors is that they lack a dynamic storytelling platform, and they don't have a mobile app. So, and then, our indirect competitors include other big board games and games like that. So, in the board game market, we will directly sell to customers via print-on-demand options on our website. We're going to work with channel partners like North Star and other companies. We're going to work with political and humanitarian organizations like the ACLU, and work with politicians and things like that. And we'll create infomercials and utilize marketing like social networking, etc. And for our app, the way we'll execute is we'll either sell the app for $1 or sell for free and make money on advertisements and sponsorships. And we'll also have options for players to donate to the company. So our goal, so we have a GoFundMe campaign. So our first funding option was crowdfunding. We had a GoFundMe campaign. And our first goal was to raise $50,000. And with that money, we would improve our mobile apps and make them more optimized for commercial use. So, but we also had stretch goals. So our first stretch goal was if we raised $150,000, we would create a physical board game as well as having the mobile apps. If we reach the second stretch goal, which is raising $200,000, we will create an online course to help immigrants navigate through the legalities of entering the U.S. And we have a third stretch goal, and that's if our game goes completely viral. We raise $10 million. So in addition to all the previous things I stated in the other stretch goals, we would also build a school on the U.S.-Mexican border to help immigrants be educated vocationally.
As you see, I put my children in a thinking tank, and the result of them playing their own game was this solution that was provided by Aidan.
The wall could cost $8 to $12 billion, and we already know that tunnels are going to be built to bypass it, and the money will be completely wasted and there will be panic in the streets. So we have come up with the idea to make 800 to 1,200 vocational schools on the U.S.-Mexican border so that we can teach the immigrants skills so they can contribute to the U.S. or even stay in their own country and contribute there. Contributing is key. So we are asking for $200,000 in exchange for 20% of our company. And we have already spent $27,000, and we hope to use the proposed money for further development and marketing of our app.
So our revenue forecast is based on, in the first year, we'll have $2.5 million of revenue, and by the end of the 5th year, we'll have $19.5 million in revenue with $5.8 million in profit. So these are based on the unit assumptions that we make $10 of profit on a $20 board game and 50 cents of profit on a $1 app. So why will we be successful? So the first reason is because of our social and political timing. So let's look at Monopoly, a game that's been around for more than 100 years. It was originally made to illustrate how rents impoverish tenants and enrich property owners. In the same way, Immigrants' Nightmare will help demonstrate the struggles of immigrants across the world.
Another reason we will be successful is because of our large amount of media attention and the topical nature of our product. We've been featured on the NPR of Washington, D.C. called WAMU. We were also on the channel WUSA 9, and we have been interviewed by the German ZDF, and even Washington Post is waiting for our next move. But the thing is that we were on BuzzFeed World, where we got 144,000 likes with over 600 shares.
So the third reason that we'll succeed is because of the game app industry. So in 2016, it was worth $36 billion. 2020's projected value is $58 billion. On Kickstarter, board games raised $52.1 million, which was 15% more than game apps. On Amazon, board games, the revenue was up 2% compared to game apps.
Another reason we'll be successful is, let me tell you a little secret. Mothers don't like it when you play video games, so if we make this game educational, then the mothers will be happy and they'll go do whatever they want, their pedicure or something, and we'll be playing day and night.
Oh, that's why you made me spend $27,000? I should have known better.
I just want to play games all day and night.
So the future growth in version 3, we are planning to have a user interface to have new content. So for different type of game, as we mentioned, Wall of China, Berlin Wall. In the fourth version, we're going to incorporate virtual and augmented reality. Virtual reality. And this is truly going to show the player the struggles that these immigrants have to go through their journey.
So a possible exit strategy that we can go through is being acquired by a major company. For example, Puzzle Social was acquired by the company Zynga.
So we have already spent so much time. We want to cut it short. So we really appreciate if you guys could help us out. So last sentence, I think, Daniel, this is very important. Can you mention about, sorry.
Can you change it up there?
Yeah, just this one.
So our mission in summary. So what if we had strict immigration laws all throughout history? People like Steve Jobs' father, a Syrian, would have never come to the US, and Steve Jobs wouldn't have revolutionized the world the way he did. Albert Einstein, who was a German immigrant, wouldn't have revolutionized physics. Even Maryam Mirzakhani, who is an Iranian immigrant, who was the first woman to ever win the Fields Medal in mathematics, which is equivalent to winning the Nobel Prize. And as an Iranian American, I'm inspired by people like Maryam Mirzakhani and know that there are people that are going to follow her footsteps. And yeah.
That's about it. We really appreciate if you help us with our campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Immigrants Nightmare. Yeah. All right. Next participant. Ben Poynter is an assistant professor of computer graphics and animation at the New York Institute of Technology and a game developer for Looking Glass Labs in Brooklyn, New York. Please welcome Ben Poynter.
Yep. Thank you. Allow me to set up for a brief moment. We'll allow that enough time to get going. So hello, thank you very much, and I'd like to thank you kindly in advance for your time today. Before going onward, where is the console where I may advance the slides? Please give me one moment. While they are finding the console, my name is Ben, and you see before you some vignettes of what I'm about to talk to you about today. I'm about to talk to you about a very, very strange thing, a game. What is stranger than that? But I'm really here to talk to you about Marshall's theory, the art, animation, and technology behind it. Now, I am unsure if this is the first instance that a hologram has ever been on the stage at Games for Change, but there is a first time for everything, a time for change, albeit. Now, there are two identities that come forward to describe this game before we see the gameplay. Looking Glass, based in laboratories in Hong Kong and New York City. Who is Looking Glass? We are a team of artists and developers and coders who seek the dream of the hologram through various artistic means. We have created things such as Toy Volume, which simulate 3D floating light displays in a cube, and the L3D cube. But primarily, the conduit which we see here is the Holo Player 1. It is a lenticular floating light display available for developers and consumers alike, which displays just that, floating light and holograms. Let's take a look. And this thing is used as a variety of modes. As a tool, as we see in sculpting right here, that can export to 3D printing, as a game device, as we'll see in a moment, and perhaps as creative means altogether. Now, who am I? The other identity. I am a teacher and also a developer. I had recently come from Beijing, China, off of teaching full-time computer graphics and animation 3D for NYIT, and I worked part-time coming to NYC. And that's how I came into meeting Looking Glass. And so, a little bit of who I am. This is not my first appearance here at Games for Change. I've made a variety of other gadgets and widgets and other things, such as this tech deck operated game, and other little things here. So I have a wacky brand of artistic endeavors. I value very much the visual image in what I do, and things which surround that ideal. Marshall's theory. What do Trump and holograms have in common? Well, let me tell you. Marshall's theory, a game that embodies a hyper-saturated fashion the social climate of the times. You're in command of the President of the United States as he engages in a deep dream standoff with the great foe this post-fact age bestows. Facts. You will run from the truth that haunts you. You will shout tweets or summon Vladimir Putin at the truth, though you have to wake eventually, unless you dream far too deeply. So, I'll add some commentary as we take a look, and there will be some footage that switches back and forth between the holoplayer version and the 2D version. There are two.
So politics. Well,
eventually
we have
replaced
by the image. We have the politics. Well, we have only happy to
abdicate
in favor of his image. Because the image. Well, we have so much more power than his put
ever.
We have.
So there he is, in his slumber, next to his teddy bear and his tweeting device. So let's fall deeply into the dream.
The
Successor
in politics.
with
We have
propaganda,
not in the sense. The message,
ideology,
but the impact of the
whole technology,
of the time. So politics. Well,
eventually
we have
replaced
by the image. We have the politics. Well, we have only happy to
abdicate
in favor of his image. Because the image. Well, we have so much more power than his put
ever.
We have.
So this nightmare was sculpted, rigged, animated by myself. And so what is the first thing that we're going to do, naturally? We summon Vladimir Putin to cast aside our foes. So the genre of the game of choice is survival horror, and that was chosen rather aptly. So we are supposed to run away from the protesters in our dreams. And of course, if you get caught, you lose a life, and you use a deflecting shield because you are deflecting, you see. And hopefully a hint of the 3D view that shows before. And there are differences between the two versions that we'll come to see here in a moment. And so that knocks everyone back, all the NPCs, all the people that we have upset in reality. So just as he did at the climate summit, he runs through people in a golf cart. The people at Looking Glass thought I was stark raving mad when I developed this. And there are two more attacks. I want to use, let's see, Sean Spicer as a human shield. There he is. So we just threw the press secretary at them. And the main mechanic behind the game is an exchange, or an electioneering style exchange, if you will, between attacking and running away. You cannot be throwing human shields infinitely throughout the game. You always have to run away too, because you are just that, inside of a dream, running away from the lies that you've perpetuated in reality. Background, we see the Washington Monument. We see Uncle Sam playing golf. There are a lot of occlusive, very disparate artistic items here. That's a better angle of the Putin strike. And I believe he has already tweeted right here. And so an interesting note while we play forward until the end of this right here is that this could be looked at in an interesting manner from either side of the fence, politically. In an odd way, it's bipartisan, because one side of the fence will see a man running away, scared inside of his own thoughts. But the other side will see a man who is aggressive, who is masculine, and who is armed to the teeth with tweets and weapons, who will defend himself, and righteously so. So either side of the fence may get something of value of it in any way, without necessarily chastising people, like the developer. And so we are slowly running out of time, and so we'll have to see if we survive. The point in the life-based system is actually used to ground people in the abstract reality, which this game is. Because the disparate visuals and elements that are so colorful here may confuse the person into what's actually going on. So there need to be like game-like structure that was going on. So now the conclusion, what will happen to everyone? Oh, we all die because of the American Health Care Act, right there. And so, ending cutscene. So, a little bit about the theoretical side of things as we come to a conclusion. Artists will see new technology and it means to create weird things about it all the time. And there are things that may not immediately make sense, such as a dreamscape or the hologram in itself. Where things are abstract, there is opportunity to be taken to make just weird things. This should be Holocene. So, that is to say that weirder things have happened in a hologram, and well before. But as for the why, there is a lot of why about why something like this exists. Why is Trump a hologram? Well, I'll tell you why. Well, there is a personal aspect of it. When I was in Beijing, kind of going back to that while teaching, before I came to New York City, I got married to my lovely, lovely wife. And so we had taken a trip to Washington, D.C., and the tricky part, without going into further detail, or as the previous wonderful guest may have gone into detail, it takes time to get the proper interview to become a full-time citizen of this country. And it's been an arduous and personal wait with my wife, which is still ongoing. And while we had visited Washington, D.C., a parade swept us up ceremoniously before we were about to leave from the old Ebbett Grill. And as we got swept into it, our emotions kind of stirred, and we thought, there needs to be something made about this, like a game. Eventually, it turned into a hologram because of the nature of the work I was doing. And the political, or the rather social elements, that's thanks to Mr. Marshall McLuhan, one of the great Canadians that's ever lived, who spoke about that particular quote in a book written by Stephen Duncombe, Progressive Politics in the Age of Fantasy, Dream. That is my token book recommendation for this presentation. And so the visuals alone, besides the coding and everything else, were roughly 150 hours. I sculpted all the visuals. I rigged them all myself, UV'd, stepped animations, all hand-placed without motion capture. And the art style was chosen to be deceptively minimalist. The colors and shapes look like they are an infographic, and infographics are supposed to be minimal to help translate information. But all of those colors and hypersaturations combined all together at once create for anything else but structure or infographic, but chaos, which we live in currently. And a little bit about the technical specs of the holoplayer versus the desktop. There is a difference in the way that I was able to immerse the viewer inside of the game. It is different from 2D. You do not simply have a camera that points forward and you can adjust the clips more willingly. You have to surround the camera almost in 360 view style. So the near clip goes backwards, the far clip goes forward, and that is what creates the floating light effect. And so in this particular light field view, there was 32. And for comparison, as I'm told, the Nintendo 3DS has 2 views in its 3D channel. And so it is a constant flurry of left and right views of the eyes when you look at this holographic display, which makes it come to life. But it, of course, soaks up all the RAM that's on your computer. That is if you don't optimize the scene accordingly, like creating skyboxes or baking all of your lights. So onward, galloping towards the end. So noting this, somehow in this weird piece where the anthropomorphic statue of Abraham Lincoln can impale himself on the monument of George Washington, just as some iconic value, somehow that doesn't exactly compare to the atmosphere of what we are experiencing currently. We're in this stage where deterrent has lost all definition, deterrent being joking about social matters and kind of playing a fun on them. But when the joke is our day-to-day existence, that somehow renders fantasy a moot. And in a dark sort of way, that is where fantasy and reality collide. And we are left with a game being a lesser representation of reality than what's going on. So why the hell is Trump a hologram? Well, conclusion. Artists like to use new tech as a means of social exploration. thinking perhaps back to the Sony Portaback in the 1960s, that kind of era where the video artists and performers were booming. Instead of using the video for social, or perhaps more commercial is the proper word for that, they would turn the camera around and point it at themselves and just act and behave for the camera based on their own identity. That's where things like gender politics or racial boundaries came into play for one of the first times ever on a video camera. And so, as we would go further, the hologram does reflect, and such is the nature of the wavering fact in this day and age. What we live in is a reflection of a reflection of a reflection. And the hologram is just that, and it transmits the 3D game and so. And holograms like to recover a lost memory, such as Tupac, such as Michael Jackson, and perhaps such as democracy. And last but not least, it's because the wonderful people at Looking Glass with their wonderful technology let me make it for something that is oddly unfitting on the machine, but somehow so fitting at once. So the information of Looking Glass is there, myself as the artist and teacher is there, and the HoloPlayer 1 comes out November 2017 for developers and artists alike. I'd like to kindly thank you for your attention, and thank you all.
Thanks so much, Ben. All right, our third presenter. So I want to remind you the prompt for this session was related to current political events, which we've clearly heard quite a bit about, and also civic engagement. And so I'm looking forward to welcoming Mary Flanagan. Mary Flanagan is the founding director of the research laboratory and design studio Tiltfactor, the founder of the publishing company Resonym, and the Sherman Fairchild Distinguished Professor of Digital Humanities at Dartmouth College. And also, by the way, she has a Kickstarter running right now for a very cool board game. Please welcome Mary Flanagan.
Oh, how exciting. Oh. Did you mention this? I didn't hear it. Okay. Sorry, I got really kickstarty. All right. Hello. I am here I'm Mary Flanagan. I'm here to talk about a new game that we're developing up at Tiltfactor at Dartmouth College. The game is called Mindflock, the flocked up trivia game. Mindflock is a same room, multiple device trivia game, and what this means is that you'll see in a second, I have some video for you. You play with a team of friends in the same room, but each of you is playing on your own device or your own phone. It's like if the well-known game Trivia Crack met the wonderful party game Space Team. So here's how it's played. Clicker. I have two devices. I couldn't leave without one or two. Here, yes. Same room, multi-trivia game. There we go. Here we go. So thank you, Ira. I need help. So here's how it's played. We have two teams of 3 players each. Each team is in one location, and they're working together, each player with their own device. Players are trying to answer trivia questions correctly, and each correct answer is a point for the team. But here's what's exciting about Mindflock. At the start of each round, each player gets a bunch of question categories, and like Pokemon, college football, or contemporary art, and teams shout back and forth to one another to see who in their team knows the answer to particular kinds of categories of questions. So for example, if one of the teammates knows a lot about theater and another one knows a lot about football, you can actually grab the question and send it to the teammate on there. So then after the questions have been moved around, everyone has a very short time to answer the ones they've gathered or ended up with by virtue of their team members. And of course, teams are competing on the internet, so you start to try to gather your points and win against the other teams. So here's a quick look at our current prototype. Players choose their player team and name, and they sign in. They move questions back and forth to other players, and then they answer the questions that they've received. So the prototype has been really well received at our playtests and at the Boston Festival of Independent Games, where it was showcased later last year. But why is Mindflock here at Games for Change? You might be wondering. Gosh, this is a lighthearted trivia game. No, I'm all right. I don't have to click yet. I thank you. Maybe you should. You could just take it over, Ira. That's great. All right. So on the surface, Mindflock, it's just a silly theme. It has nothing to do with current social events. It seems Mindflock appears to be nothing more than a team-based trivia game. But what ho? Of course, you might think twice if you see me coming that there are ulterior motives in a lot of my games. So what is happening here is that Prevention Innovations. Mindflock was created by my lab Tiltfactor in collaboration with the Prevention Innovations Research Center at the University of New Hampshire to solve a specific problem. Sexual assault is the most common violent crime committed on college campuses today, with 1 in 5 women experiencing a completed or attempted sexual assault during their undergraduate study. Mindflock addresses this problem by containing trivia questions that increase players' likelihood to intervene in cases of sexual assault. I'll tell you more about that in a second, but first I want to address how this is civic engagement. According to the APA, civic engagement is traditionally thought of as an individual volunteerism to organizational involvement to electoral participation. But as one can broadly really look at ideas about civic engagement, we can think of it as individual and collective actions designed to identify and address issues of public concern. In a political climate that increasingly promotes sexual harassment, sexual assault, and the limiting of women's bodily autonomy, bystander intervention is becoming an ever more important method of preventing sexual assault. Mindflock's questions are written to address the known psychological barriers that are often present to prevent bystanders from intervening in situations of harassment and assault. Bystander intervention in sexual assault is without a doubt a form of civic engagement. Our impactful trivia questions use some of these strategies shown here to change players' likelihood of intervening in sexual assault. Let me show you some example questions written within these strategies, and some of these may be familiar to you in other kinds of change areas, but I'll show you example questions that really bring these ideas to light. So the first one would be setting positive norms. This question, for example, makes Dartmouth students playing it aware that Dartmouth students intervene in harassment more than students at any other school, and that the number of people who intervene is really high, 60% of the students. A first-year Dartmouth student playing Mindflock then begins to understand that at Dartmouth, if you see sexual harassment, people normally intervene. It's norm setting. Another question. So we have anti-rape cultural role models. Role model questions like this one present a revered famous person along with the work they are doing to combat sexual assault, with the understanding that people attempt to emulate their role models. Some of our questions are very straightforward. Go to a healthcare provider. If there has been an incident here, the player is reminded that Harry Potter helps a drugged Ron Weasley by taking him to the magical equivalent of a healthcare provider. And another kind of question would be risk from no action. So the increased risk that people are at when they're not allowed to intervene or when they can't intervene. So questions like this one point out potential real-world problems if someone doesn't intervene or doesn't take that extra step towards bystander intervention. So I'm going to just show you here. So this is not to say that most questions in the game have anything to do with bystander intervention. In fact, they constitute less than half the questions. Most of our questions are just for fun, like this one. Whovians know that David Tennant is, of course, the 10th Doctor Who. You have to figure out who on your team watches Doctor Who and send that question to them. So this approach, this idea of taking serious content and melding it with not serious content has been significantly studied in my lab. One of the really important things that we've done in the last 2 or 3 years is come up with this idea of embedded design, where we take on-topic social issues and embed them in non-topic social issues and try to get an understanding of when people are overloaded with the content, when people are overloaded with a message, and when they're not. And we did this research on a game called Luminists that we developed in our lab about women science role models. It's a time-traveling scientist game, and we had a balanced number of luminous scientists being men and women, and then an imbalance, so where we had more women than men. And so what we had is, in the study, Our game, we had 8 scientists depicted. In the equal condition, 4 were men and 4 were women. In the imbalanced condition, 2 were men and 6 were women, so far more women. And we found that that was really counterintuitive. Even though girls were exposed to more female role models, in the imbalanced condition, these role models had virtually no effect on girls' inclination to see themselves pursuing science careers, especially in computer science. So you can actually do, I would venture to even use the word harm, by overdoing sometimes your message. And this is something I think that was a really interesting finding for us, and something that was a little bit counterintuitive. And I think it has a lot to do with the notion of psychological reactance, that when we are fed too many ideas that seem going in a particular direction, we can kind of sniff that out and know, oh wow, they wanted me to think this way. I'm not necessarily going to do that. I think most of us have that familiar feeling when we feel preached to. The word preachy comes up sometimes in Games for Change, and that's an interesting topic. So let's take a look at what we did here. Last fall, we ran a pilot study with over 250 first-year students at a mid-sized university in New England, and found that players who played Mindflock had significantly increased bystander efficacy scores, which measured how comfortable they would feel if they were asked to intervene. And this is over a month after playing. So we did sessions with players, and then this assessment was actually done a month later, which is, I think, relatively long-term as far as some of the intervention work goes. As a longitudinal study. So Mindflock, at least in the month-long era with bystander intervention attitudes, works, and especially works among college men. It makes first-year college students more likely to intervene in instances of sexual assault, at least on a psychological basis. And of course, this is 1-hour gameplay session. Imagine if people were playing every week. So this brings me to the vision of Mindflock's future. There are lots of training programs to help prevent sexual assault on college campuses, like there are IRB training programs and other kinds of programs. Many of the programs that are out there are not studied. Some of them are studied to various degrees of success. What if our simple trivia game could supplement these programs, and what if they could actually replace them? It's a big call, and it's something that we're working on. Mindflock was developed to be this intramural trivia game to be played on college campuses. The colleges themselves would bring Mindflock into the first-year dorms in place or in addition to traditional bystander intervention training. And from then on, first-year floors would be competing with their peer floors on a weekly basis, climbing the leaderboards and unlocking trophies. But of course, we want Mindflock and this idea of bystander intervention to be a cultural wide thing and not necessarily a college campus thing, because sexual assault happens everywhere. And to this end, I wanted to kind of give you a sketch of what the full app might look like. Our current prototype has the core gameplay implemented, but doesn't have, for example, matchmaking across large numbers of people. So we would think about ways in which we have these multiple groups of people playing with each other, unlimited number of players, server design. Some of this kind of stuff is stuff we haven't had to do when we're designing for our research study. And so to take an app that's working from a research perspective and really move it into the mainstream is where we want to go with this. Also multiple teams, each user having multiple teams. If I'm on my college group team, I might want to also play with my family, and I might want to be a part of several different teams all at the same time. So those are some of the screens that we have been looking at, how we can get different members and different screens. Then, of course, there's this idea of having something like a practice mode where we would have getting ready for the league play. And this could even be played at pubs at trivia night in a kind of co-located yet public version of play. So what I'm looking at is thinking about expanding this kind of app to really accommodate large numbers of people and large numbers of players, various kinds of team membership and modes, and also for the ability for the public to actually create some of the questions, and then how do we balance the content-specific questions with the user-generated content together. So even though Mindflock is this multiplayer game, it could also be a single-player game where you just challenge yourself or challenge strangers. So I want to thank everyone for considering Mindflock, and I'd love to take questions from Ira, and I don't know if we're allowed to take questions from you, but I'd like to take questions anyway. Thank you.
I think in the interest of time, we might save questions for after the session. But let's bring out everyone for one. I just want to get everyone back on stage and do one additional round of applause as soon as we get everyone on.
Here they come.
Okay, come on out. So one of the things that I love about the Games for Change community is how collaborative everyone can be and how much energy there can be around shared goals. And I think, though we've heard from a lot of different ideas here, I think everyone has a very similar goal to make the world better through games. So though this was billed as a pitch competition, I actually have 3 awards to give out, and I'm going to do that now. So let's save applause for the very end, but no, that's wrong. Let's applaud after each one. That's much better. Yeah, okay. So best new developer I'm going to give to the Immigrants Challenge team. All right. I'm also going to award best use of new cutting-edge technology to Marshall's Theory. And I'm going to give best overall to Mindflock. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the show.